Good evening. Calling to order the meeting of Monday, March 16th, 2020. We'll all rise and salute the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk?
Roll call of the members. Councilor Janino. Here. Councilor Guanasso.
Here.
Here. Councilor McKenna.
Here.
Here. Councilor Morabito.
Here.
Here. Councilor Novoselsky is absent. Councilor Powers.
Here.
Here. Councilor Rotundo.
Present.
Here. Councilor Sereno.
Here.
Here. Councilor Visconti.
Here.
Here. Councilor Zambuto.
Here.
Here. And Council President Keefe.
Here.
Here. Quorum is present.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
First item on the agenda, calendar item number 2, approval of the journal of the regular meeting of February 24th, 2020.
In favor? Motion approved.
Calendar item number 3, public hearings. Hearing called as ordered on a loan order in the amount of $2 million for the Revere High School feasibility study.
Is anyone here to speak on that order? Any proponents? Opening the proponent side?
Proponents, right?
Yep, Mayor Rigo.
Good evening, Mr. President, members of the council. Of course, I rise to speak in favor of the $2 million loan order for the feasibility study of the high school. This has been something that you've all been very well versed in and understand, and we are excited to take this next step to dig into the details of the new high school and figure out some of the, I think, the big questions that folks have about location and size of the school and the programming of the school. That's what will happen through the feasibility process. And I just want to commend Dr. Kelly for all of her great work, especially in these times, which are pretty difficult. But this loan order is, of course, important, and we want to, and we hope that we have the support of the council. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Any other proponents? Any proponents closing that side of the hearing? Any opponents? Seeing and hearing none, we're going to close that side of the hearing. Any councilors wishing to speak? Seeing, Councilor Visconti?
I'm excited about this, to get the ball rolling, actually. So I know a lot of residents of Revere are excited, and let's get going, as they say. So I'm in favor.
Thank you,
Mr. President.
Councilor Powers?
Yes, I also support this. I think it's long overdue. I think it's one of the greatest areas in city government that can work to support students and those students that will come years and years from now. I know that a good percentage of the monies will come back from the state, and I think that with the commercial development, particularly Suffolk Downs and the new 3 hotels that are in the works right now being constructed, I said that'll provide a lot of money down the road to pay for the bonded debt on these schools when we do have to go out to bond them. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Powers. Mr. Councilor Zambuto?
Thank you, Mr. President. Obviously, anytime there's a big expenditure like this, the hair stands up in the back of my neck. However, my colleague from Ward 5 just talked about all the great commercial development we got going on in this city, and I'm even more excited about that. So I know we'll be able to support our share of this, and I look forward to getting this study done. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think everyone is going to be happy to see this move forward. So with that being said, we're going to move this on to the next council meeting, and it'll be voted on hopefully favorably. And, oh, sorry, we're going to take a roll call tonight. My apologies. Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Shall the City Council approve a loan order in the amount of $2 million for the Revere High School feasibility study? Councilor Janino.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Guanasso.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor McKenna.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Morabito.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Novoselsky is absent. Councilor Powers.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Rotundo.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Sereno.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Visconti.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Zambuto.
Yes.
Yes. And Council President Keefe.
Yes.
Yes, the loan order has been approved. Calendar item number 4, hearing called as ordered on an ordinance relative to food trucks.
Any proponents wishing to speak on that? I know that there was a letter of Mayor Arrigo.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the council. The food truck ordinance that's before you is the product of a lot of hard work with city staff, and you see that in the letter of support that was provided. This is a way for us to formalize and regulate the use of food trucks in the community. We want to encourage anyone, and especially Revere residents who have businesses, to be able to open them and succeed. And so we put this forward. We've learned a lot from other communities, and you see that the package that we have before you really takes, I think, the best approach from different cities and different regulations. And we're hopeful to have this passed, and we can then regulate and be able to have food trucks legally operate throughout the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Arrigo. And we have some letters from some proponents as well. Madam Clerk, would you like to read those into the record?
Yes. We are the undersigned proponents of the proposed ordinance relative to food trucks, calendar item 4, Council Order 20-052 for the March 16, 2020 Revere City Council meeting. Food trucks have expanded rapidly in both numbers and popularity over the past few years, and many cities are finding themselves ill-equipped to deal with these vendors from a regulatory perspective. Communities across the country, from Los Angeles to Philadelphia, and locally from Malden to Springfield, are part of a burgeoning movement to find ways to better manage and regulate mobile vending. City ordinances relative to mobile vending were largely written decades ago, and vendors such as ice cream trucks in mind. Over the years, food trucks have evolved. Most use large vehicles equipped with high-tech cooking equipment and sanitation devices to provide sophisticated, safe cuisine, usually prepared to order rather than pre-cooked. Allowing the passage of this ordinance would allow Revere to regulate food trucks and incorporated food trucks into the fabric of our city. City-specific solutions are definitely in order, but there are an emerging set of best practices to help tailor regulations so that both the city and the vendors realize the full spectrum of economic and social benefits that food trucks can bring to a community. Some recommendations include conduct town hall forums and private meetings with core stakeholders, encourage dialogue and the building of relationships among competing stakeholders, identify private vacant lots to create partnerships for mobile vendors to gather and sell, designate public spaces and assign locations specifically for mobile vending. In addition to the above recommendations, pilot programs can be a useful way to determine what regulations to adopt. For the past 2 years, the city's Healthy Community Initiatives and the Recreation Departments piloted the Revere Summer Night Series all around the city. We held events in various neighborhoods around the theme of outdoor food, music, and fun. This pilot was to test the market on public interest, varying locations, regulations including permitting and inspections, building of relationships among brick and mortar restaurants, and providing our city offerings of unique new food. We found that locations near public transit and large workplaces such as City Hall and MGH had higher foot and sales traffic for the events and nearby vendors. We were able to activate spaces around the city with outdoor seating, live music, games for children, working with nearby businesses, and bringing in food trucks, the majority of whom are Revere residents but unable to operate their businesses regularly in the city that they live in. Due to their low startup and upkeep costs, food trucks are proving to be an innovative way for entrepreneurs to create viable businesses, particularly as recent economic conditions have made it more difficult to start and operate a conventional restaurant. The National Restaurant Association reports that they generated approximately $650 million in revenue in 2012, about 1% of total U.S. restaurant sales. And a recent research report by the Intuit Network predicts that food trucks will generate between 3% and 4% of total restaurant revenue, about $2.7 billion by 2017, a fourfold increase from 2012. A March 12, 2020 article by Mobile Cuisine states that now is the best time for starting a food truck business. John Gaber, an urban planning professor at the University of Arkansas, noted that food trucks are great things for communities. They provide more eyes on the street for public safety and complement the surrounding brick and mortar businesses. How will your city tap into these potential new sources of economic growth, entrepreneurship, equity, redevelopment, public safety, and community flavor? We look forward to the next steps of this proposed food truck ordinance. Please let us know if we can assist in answering any questions or comments before the subcommittee meeting to discuss moving this ordinance forward. Sincerely, Dimple Rana, Director of Healthy Community Initiatives, Michael Hinojosa, Director of Parks and Recreation, Charlie DeFrida, Assistant Director of Parks and Recreation, Abel Moreno, Elodie Boston Food Truck, Christian Mancia, Maria's Taqueria Restaurant and Food Truck, Andres Hamarillo, Peros Paises Food Truck, and Diana Cardona, Chocolafe LLC.
Thank you, very thorough. Any councils wishing to speak? Councilor Rotundo.
Thank you, Mr. President. In the future, anything of that nature, can we waive the reading in order to expedite us for leaving for all the purposes that we all know about? Thank you.
I understand, definitely. It was a nice, well-written letter. It was a little thorough. Any other councilors? Councilor Zambudo.
Next time, send in an MP3 file or something so we can listen to it.
Okay. Any other councilors? Before we vote, if I could just make one comment on this. Obviously, I would just hope that, and I'm very much in favor of offering the ability to have food trucks in the city. I think it does it will add to our community, but I would be very cognizant and careful before to monitor the effect it has on brick and mortar locations where there's high rents that these locations are paying, and we'd want to be respectful to the tax-paying businesses of our city. So I would ask that within a year, we have some sort of an analysis on what type of impact it may have on the community. Other than that, Councilor Sereno.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. I think this is a great idea, and similar to what Council President Keefe was saying, just keeping in mind the local businesses and whatnot, and I've seen what happened with the International Sand Sculpting Festival and whatnot, but would we be willing to make some language in there to prohibit the same type of cuisine from being served on a food truck that's in the same area, like maybe 250 feet from, so I'm thinking like right out here, China Roma and Woody's Pizza, that kind of thing.
So I would,
Mary.
Mr. President, through you to the councilor, I would say that that's part of the legislative process, right? If you guys have ideas, we want to hear them. Ultimately, we want to get to a point where we can formalize and encourage folks to come in and have food trucks, and especially, as I said, Revere residents who are looking to have food trucks. And so whatever kind of stipulations we add, we're open and amenable to them. I think that's part of the process, and we look forward to having that happen. Okay?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
We can.
Councilor, we're actually,
This going to go to a committee?
yeah, I'd like to send this to committee. There's a few other questions that we just wanted to make sure that we're in favor.
Great.
So the recommendation will be to send this to Legislative Affairs. Everyone in favor? So ordered. Madam Clerk, I'd ask for a suspension of rules to take up calendar item number 10 in regards to the mayor and a response and Dr. And the city in response to the COVID-19 preparation.
Mr. President, through you to the members of the council, I know we have been in various forms of communication since, we've had a state of emergency ordered by the governor and a number of other things that have happened with this kind of fluid and dynamic situation. So I wanted to be here tonight to present any or answer any questions that councilors may have, but also give a little bit of an update. We've been giving updates through city website, through press releases, through video, but I did want to make sure that we address the council formally. I was originally thinking of doing this from home, given the current restrictions that we have in terms of numbers of people, but I did think that this is an important enough issue that I had to formally be here to present. But as you all know, and I want to start by thanking the team that I have around me and in the city. We are incredibly lucky to have so many great, dedicated professionals, public safety, public health, and all over, making our response and making sure that we're prepared for this international pandemic. I think to say those two words and to say that we're responding to it is pretty surreal and really unprecedented. But to be able to say with certainty and with confidence that we have an incredible team is one that certainly gives me some comfort, and it should give the residents of the city comfort, and it should give all of you some comfort. I want to specifically thank a few people, and two of them are behind me. Dr. Kong, who is the chair of our Board of Health, and Kim Hanton, who is the director of our COVID-19 response team. They have been invaluable in this process of being prepared and dealing with all that is coming and has come already. And I also want to give a special thank you to Dr. Kelly for her work as superintendent. I can't tell you how many times I've had conversations with other mayors and other folks who are dealing with the same thing that we're all dealing with, and the level of comfort that I have, and the competency, and it's a better word than competency, but the ability to rise to the level that Dr. Kelly has through this process has been really amazing. While other communities were struggling to figure out what they were going to do in terms of food and breakfast and lunch, Dr. Kelly had a plan ready. And so for us to be able to know that every school would be open, every facility would be open, she'd have the staff available, she'd make sure that the right precautions were taken, even in terms of being able to teach virtually. And preparing the teachers, and another shout out to the teachers who are willing to step up and do what should be done in terms of being able to educate our children while we're in this unprecedented dynamic situation. And so having people like Dr. Kelly, people like Dr. Kong, and people like Kim Hanton at the city's kind of disposal is really special. And just to give folks a little bit of an update. I know that we've talked a lot about this already, but we are doing everything possible, and every tool that's in the City of Revere's toolbox is being used to make sure that we slow the spread of this virus. And although there hasn't been a confirmed case in the City of Revere yet, yet is a big word because it is going to happen, and we're prepared for that. And we know that it's only a matter of time before something does happen, and somebody is positive in the City of Revere. And I know that there's going to be a level of panic that comes along with that. I want to assure people that when that does happen, we are prepared. We have been working tirelessly to make sure that we're prepared for that. The biggest message that I can present to all of you tonight, and to anyone listening or watching at home, is to stay home to the best of your ability. And it's a little funny to say that standing in front of you outside of my home, but we want people to stay home, and we want people to know that city services are going to continue. We're going to do what we can to provide those virtually, but we really are encouraging folks to stay home. And that's why we close City Hall to the public, and that's why we've taken the measures that we've taken to close the library, close public spaces, and we will continue to have, I have ongoing conversations with regional mayors, with the governor's office, with folks up and down state, federal government, making sure that we're on top of whatever is coming, because this is such a fluid and dynamic situation. As all of you know, things have changed almost by the day, and so we're constantly meeting. We're constantly kind of using our contacts to figure out what's going on and figure out how best to move. So with that, there are a number of things that we've done. I've talked a little bit about the lunch service that's been provided. We are having ongoing conversations with our business community, because we know this. I mean, if you look at the stock market and you look at what's happening in the private industry, we know there's going to be a deep economic impact. And, I'm not going to, I guess I can talk about it a little bit, but we've asked for $1 million out of the stabilization fund. That is just in case. I think it's great that the governor is allowing folks to deficit spend, but we are in the financial position to be able to say we're going to dedicate this money. I have a bond rating call next week, and the ability to say, hey, we've got money in our savings account. We're ready to dedicate it. The council is on board with that. They understand the levity of the situation, and regardless of $1 million, it's not much when you hear people talk about 15 million, 15 billion, all different numbers that get thrown out. But we're doing our part to make sure that everyone that is in the city and works for the city has the resources available to them to make sure that we're prepared for whatever happens. I will end by saying that the one thing that I'm really encouraged by is the number of people who have stepped up to volunteer. It's really, all of us know how resilient the city of Revere is, and I think it's no shock to anyone to know that folks have been stepping up to volunteer. We did, with the help of Ruben Cantor and our director of innovation and data management. He's been able to get these things up quickly, and I have to thank him for all of his great work over the last couple of weeks. But to be able to let the residents know, hey, we're going to have a formalized process where if you want to volunteer, because I can't tell you how many text messages I got saying, hey, how can I help? What can I do? Well, go sign up for it, and we'll get in touch with you and make sure we're doing the outreach that we need to do to take advantage of that. So it really is incredible to be the mayor of this city, and it's incredible to be the mayor during this time when I know everyone steps up, when our resiliency shows, and when we step up to the plate. So I want to thank all of you for your help and your support. We had a phone call this morning. We're going to continue those phone calls. We'll probably have daily phone calls going forward. It may not be much tomorrow, but 3 days from now, this could be a whole different situation. And I want to make sure that everyone understands that, and everyone understands that we're fully prepared for that. And I'm lucky to have the team, and we're all lucky to have the team. The residents are lucky to have the team that we have in place to make sure that we respond to this international pandemic the way that our residents deserve. With that, I will turn it over to Kim Hanton, who has been, who I've named as the director of our COVID response team. I want her to just talk a little bit about what she's doing. She talked a little bit about it today on the phone call, but I want to make sure she has an opportunity to chat, and I want Dr. Kong to be able to present to you some of the things that she's seeing, and she's somebody whose time is incredibly valuable, especially at this point. So I really appreciate the time that she's given to us and that she's given to the residents the last couple weeks, because she has been there every time that we had a question about something. She was willing to make time for us. So I'll turn it over to those folks. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
And I guess if you have any questions, maybe we can get our folks to speak, and then maybe I'll stick around for questions if anyone has any.
I just want to say thank you for what you have done in the last 2 weeks. You've been, kudos to you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
I appreciate that. It's my job. Thank you.
Good evening. Challenging times. I just wanted to start with, we are being led by our board of directors, our chair. She has been fabulous in guiding me 100% of the way from the medical model of care, because that is not my specialty, and I really rely on Dr. Kong every step of the way. But what I'm going to talk a little bit about is the emergency response team that we did put in place, and then I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Kong. So we rolled this out this morning. Oh, sorry, I'm short, sorry. We worked a great deal on this over the weekend, and I can't thank Ruben enough. Without Ruben, I wouldn't have been able to pull this off. The technology that he's allowed me to participate in has been really, really helpful. So Ruben is a strong member of our emergency response team, so please recognize that. We have, we put different things in different categories so that we could respond to this situation in a methodical and an organized way. And we're trying to keep people in lanes so that everybody isn't crossing over, and that people are responding and they're answering to a chain of command And then we have opportunities to bring everyone together. So let me just kind of go down the list on really the categories that we have in place. And if there's any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer. I'm speaking because I've been doing this for the last 3 days. So, forgive me if I'm just automatically assuming that you know what I'm talking about. So if I'm missing a point, please ask. So we put a team together. It's called the Case Management Team. It's the state and regional coordination. So the responsibility of this individual is really to pull a team together to respond to information that we receive from the community in regards to possible presumptive positives, possible contaminations, and that team is out there to really do the legwork and communicate, as well as they're the lead in the MAVEN system, which is the system with the state, from the state, where we get reports. We get them all the time, but at 4 o'clock every day is an update. And our case management leader is the one that takes a look at that, but also is, as I said, it's coming in from all ends. And she has a team that's boots on the ground, making the phone calls and really investigating any of the reports that we're getting. We have an outreach coordinator, and the outreach coordinator's responsibility is to really oversee the vulnerable population, the seniors, the disabled, the veterans, the youth, and the immigrants. So that position has a lot of our departments under it. So the division heads of the departments that I just mentioned are working very collaboratively with the outreach coordinator. We have a wellness coordinator, and our wellness coordinator is working very closely with Revere Cares. And the responsibility is to really take a look at, what the food assistance may be needed, and financial impact, and translation of, for immigrants and communication, outreach and wellness, mental health and trauma, because that's another big thing that people forget at times, that right now a lot of the behavioral health outpatient programs are closing. So they're going to a telehealth model, which means that the clinicians or the prescribers are going to be doing this via phone, and so it's really going to cause some confusion and some chaos for this vulnerable population, and we may see a surge, in wellness calls that are needed, so this is really, the direct contact of this wellness coordinator to really keep us all informed and possibly come up with better ideas. Another piece of this that's really very near and dear to my heart, as most of you know, when we talk about, this surge of an epidemic, and, this is a pandemic, but, my background is working on the opioid epidemic, and, my role in that was to decrease exposure, so that we could flatten the curve of overdose. And unfortunately, we may see a surge in this, during this pandemic. And so this is, and the wellness coordinator will, in conjunction with me, I'm always there for every one of these folks and individuals to really kind of, to help support them and give them whatever resources that we need to really man this. So that is our wellness coordinator. Then we have obviously our logistics, which is, the team that's prioritizing, our supply needs and plans and distribution and equipment and different things that are out there in a city that are ongoing on a regular basis. And they're coordinating and making sure that we're all kept, safe, and we have the materials that we need. Then the facilities and supplies, they're coordinating with our facilities and DPW, and, really making, a valiant effort of making sure that everything that we need in every area that needs to be cleansed and repeat cleansed, and all of that is taken care of. Then, of course, our business liaisons, Mr. Mayor had spoken briefly on that, but it's just vital. These businesses are really, it's concerning and it's alarming. So we're going to see if there's, a way that we can, help support them and keeping them open so that they can get, be part of delivery systems and, other means to keep them financially afloat. So we have a business business liaison attached to that. Then we have a communication liaison, which is really the point person for all of the division heads to really kind of communicate through so that it kind of comes up the chain so that we're all hearing the needs of each of these division department heads, that, we're there for them, and that because business still has to continue. Even if we're doing it remotely, it still has to continue. Then, of course, the financial aspect of things, which is vital. And, we're really working really hard to make sure that everything is getting documented so that, we potentially can recoup. I mean, we're really pretty confident that this is going to happen, but that's a waiting game, as people know. And then public information, where we're communicating to the public. This is ongoing. We are having daily calls with the public communication team so that we're putting everything in place, and so the public is hearing on a daily basis from a press release everything that's going down every single day. And it changes not just daily. Right now it's changing hourly. So when you may be seeing something, you're like, no, that was, it's like, we'll get it. We promise you we're on top of it. But sometimes it's so fluid and it's so quick, that by the time something goes out, it's changing. So once again, we're here for you. We're here to answer to you and for you. And if there's any questions after you talk, after Dr. Kong gives an opportunity to speak, I'll be more than happy to answer anything. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hannon. Dr. Khan.
Hi, I don't need that much time to talk, but I just want to echo the sentiments that have already been expressed. I think Mayor Rigo and Kim have done an outstanding job in rising to the occasion and being prepared for and then responding to such a fast-moving pandemic. This is uncharted territory. This is something that is we're in a very unique time in our city, in our country, and the world. So things are happening at a breakneck speed, and we're trying to respond to them as fast as the news comes out to us. All I'm trying to do is stay as informed as possible with the right resources, the CDC, the Mass DPH, and try and understand, how fast this is spreading, and, who's recovering, who's potentially not recovering. And shout out to Carol Donovan, who is also a fantastic resource for me, as she is the one controlling Maven, and she's really boots on the ground for me to understand, not if, but I guess when someone in our city will unfortunately have the virus. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And you gave us a tremendous amount of information. I'm not sure if any councilors have anything to say or any questions. Councilor Rotundo.
Thank you, and I want to thank you all for what you're doing. I know how hard it is. Thank you to the mayor. My question is part statement, part question. And one of the things that I think that people need to know is that there was a form that went out on Facebook asking for people to sign up and actually basically help as a volunteer in this pandemic. One of the things that I'd like to put forward that I'm sure Dr. Kong will understand more than anybody is that we have many people that are in this community that are medical professionals from other countries but may not have actually been able to license yet. We need to identify them. We need to get them on board, because in the event that we have to treat in place, which is a good possibility considering the availability of ICU beds in town and around the state. So do we have a plan to deal with treating in place, number one, if we have to, which is something that was in part of the 2004 SARS protocol. So I'm just wondering where we are with that.
So I can't specifically talk about the treating in place plans, but I can say that part of the reason why we have an outreach team is to exactly do that, right? Identify folks who can help and make sure that we're prepared. That's something that I think I would look to the kind of medical folks to see whether or not we're prepared for that. But I think as Kim noted, what we want to do is make sure we're doing the outreach and we have the structure in place as a community to be able to respond and be proactive, right? And go find people who are going to be helpful if this kind of breaks the way that I think everyone kind of thinks it will, right? And if this happen, if this becomes it already is an issue. It already is a problem, right? If it becomes a bigger problem in the community on a local basis, we'll be prepared for that.
The other question that I have, and this is more towards you, Mayor Arrigo, if you would take a second. And thank you for being so gracious with your emails. The same thing with Rick Viscay and Bob Mara. As far as I know at this point, Stop and Shop is having specific hours for our seniors. Is there a way that we can do something for pretty much like Market Basket if it hasn't been already? If so, can we announce it now? And I got one more thing after that.
Yep, we've been making those contacts with our business folks to kind of push them and say, hey, is this something that you can do? I know Stop and Shop did announce around 4 o'clock this evening that they would have dedicated hours for folks over 60 years old. My hope is that Market Basket will follow suit, and we've already been in touch with our pharmacies to make sure that they're either prepared for additional home deliveries or that they're prepared for the increase in demand that they're gonna see. So those conversations are happening, and that's part of the importance of, again, to go back to the response team and having that infrastructure in place to know that who's responsible for that and make sure that it's getting done. Those contacts business-wise have been made, and there's an ongoing conversation. I think things are really fluid, as you know, with everything that it has anything to do with coronavirus. Everything's really fluid.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Powers?
Thank you, Mr. President. I have two questions. One is for Kim, and the other one would be for the mayor. My first question is, a person wakes up hypothetically tomorrow morning. They have a high fever. They have some of the symptoms of coronavirus. What is in place for those people? Where do they go? How do they get tested?
Well, that's actually a question for Dr. Kong.
Yeah.
I got you. Great question. Right now, the recommendation is to call their primary care doctor. A lot of clinics have different protocols in place. At MGH and the Brigham, we have created a specific phone triage flow sheet. Like, it's literally like here's your questions, check yes and no. And then the computer will spit out, using the current Mass DPH and CDC guidelines for testing, who is eligible for testing. We have clinics at both Mass General and Brigham. I can't speak for CHA or other.
Excuse me, you say Mass General, you're including Mass General Revere?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mass General, so any Mass General site, no matter what city, Chelsea, Revere, partners, yeah. Basically all of partners. We have a COVID testing site, and patients will get called to, basically just get triaged again and make sure they're appropriate for testing, because again, test kits remain limited. I hope that gets better soon, but test kits remain limited, so there's specific criteria in place for who qualifies for testing. Even if you don't qualify for testing, if your symptoms are, I'll tell you right now, if you have a fever and a cough, I'm gonna be telling you to quarantine for 14 days. And you can't go to work or go anywhere public until you are asymptomatic for at least 1 to 2 days after that 14-day period. So even though we're not testing, even though we right now don't have the ability to do widespread testing, we are still working under the assumption that these patients could have COVID and they will be asked to quarantine.
I need to interrupt you. Thank you. If you just, Doctor, if you would further, if I may, please, please further go and expand upon those people who have shortness of breath, what they should do at that point?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so if patients are, let's say, less than 70 or 65 years old, they don't have lung disease, but they have a fever and a cough, if they are not a healthcare worker, if they don't have like a travel history, they'll most likely be asked to quarantine at home. If they're a little bit more high risk, if they do have shortness of breath, we will refer to the ED and we will page the biothreats pager to let them know that they're coming in to the ED, because there's still a subset of patients. Thankfully, many of them do not require hospitalization, but some of them do. Some of them will as this gets worse. Right now, there's only 15 folks hospitalized in Massachusetts, or well, rather in Boston. 10 at MGH, 5 at the Brigham for this, but there are many others. I think the count as of 4 p.m. today at the DPH website is 197 patients who have confirmed positive for COVID. So only 15 of those have been in the hospital. So everyone else is self-isolating. So far, no deaths, which is good. But yes, if your symptoms are critical, you will be asked to go to the emergency room and you will most likely be hospitalized and obviously tested.
Thank you. My next question is for the mayor, if I may. Mr. Mayor, and this is not hypothetical because I can imagine that there are cases like this in existence around this city and all throughout the country and the Commonwealth, et cetera. Let's take a single parent that works every day, sends their children to school. Schools are closed. They can't do that anymore. Obviously, this would prohibit them from going to work. What is in the pipeline right now through the federal government or the Commonwealth of Massachusetts? I turn on the TV at night and I hear 50 billion, 30 billion, 20 billion. And I'd like to know what they can expect and when they can expect it. Some type of assistance that would enable them to stay at home and also have protection from not losing their position down the road and monetarily. What is in the pipeline?
So I'll say this right now, from a state or federal level, we haven't heard much about that, about folks that are looking for childcare or have difficulty because they're a single parent and because they have to work. My sense is that today the governor announced a small business loan or small business a piece of legislation that would provide some support for small businesses. I think that as time goes on, and again, I hate to keep saying this is a fluid situation, but as time goes on, you're going to see that the impacts that we have through residents who have issues with child care, that those are going to be real, and they're going to present themselves in a big way throughout the not only the city, the state, but the country. So this is part of the reason why we're even asking for an appropriation, is so that we can be prepared for things that are going to impact our residents. There's already an impact to everyone's quality of life at this point, but there's going to be a much bigger impact as businesses close, as business halts. We know that there are going to be people that are going to be negatively impacted by that. And what we want to do is make sure that we're prepared to help folks, and that's why we have somebody dedicated to not only the business community, but to vulnerable populations. And we have contacts on that level that we can make sure that we're prepared for a longer period of time. I mean, the president just said we're looking to get through this by July or August, which I think was really eye-opening for a lot of people, because folks had said a few weeks, a couple of months, maybe, but to think of that timeline, it's an extended period of time. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done. And I think that we cannot, and one thing that I've been clear to my team about, and I think everyone understands, is that we can't wait for federal or state action, that we have to be prepared ourselves, we have to be ready ourselves, and that's why things like the appropriation that's before you are before you, so that we can start to move in that direction. So in terms of a particular plan, I wouldn't say we have anything particularly ready, but Kim will...
As the mayor had suggested, that we do have somebody on staff in the emergency response team that part of their responsibility is to seek the resources out there, because we're hearing that there's going to be some form of emergency unemployment available. So we're looking towards working with the unemployment agency, bringing in maybe kind of a benefit advocate, just really putting pieces in place to really start this process.
Is there a general contact number out there that people that are experiencing these problems or will experience these problems in the ensuing weeks and months can call?
Mass.gov is right now. Mass.gov has.
That's great, but locally, that's a great point. What we're encouraging folks to do is call 311, but in the coming days and probably weeks, and this is something that we'll talk about, is having a dedicated line for folks who are impacted by COVID and both
That's what I was referencing.
businesses, residents, just so that there's a dedicated place where either email, phone number, and other kind of information can be disseminated, and we can get feedback from residents.
Thank you very much.
Great point. Thank you,
Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Morabito.
Thank you, Mr. President. I was actually going to ask about the dedicated line. Mr. Mayor, are there any active measures that police and firefighters are taking to protect themselves right now?
Yep, so there are, through you, the counselor, there are some relatively basic things, social distancing wise, right? Roll call is now outside. Roll call is taking place in police officers' cruisers. And of course, there are other measures that are being taken, and we've made sure that, and we will be making sure, again, this is a fluid situation, that things like enforcement of public spaces. I mentioned this on the call earlier today that if we get a 65-degree day, we may have an issue with a lot of kids congregating or people congregating in certain places. We want to kind of discourage that. So we'll have to have a public safety plan in place for that, and the chief is working on those kinds of things. So even in terms of enforcement of the restaurant kind of shutdown that the governor ordered, we're figuring out how that works and how, with municipal inspections department and with the police and our licensing board, we're making sure that we're all coordinating and on the same page. So there are some smaller things that have been done around social distancing and things that will keep people hopefully healthy, and then some bigger logistical issues that we're dealing with and that we know will arise as time goes on.
One more question. Thank you for that answer. So I know you mentioned economic impact, and it's going to worsen as time goes on. One thing I suggest is maybe look into possible grace periods or late fees. Obviously not right now, but eventually that would be one way of helping citizens in the future.
I look back at our new director of finance. So that is something, everything is on the table, right? And so you'll see popping up around City Hall what look like mailboxes for payment, right? So that folks can drop off their payments if necessary, so they don't have to necessarily come into the building. But we are looking at every avenue to waive convenience fees for online bill payment. And potentially we will have to look at potentially waiving late fees if we get to a point where, this is an extended closure and City Hall is closed for an extended period of time, and we know that there's an economic impact that goes along with things being shut down for a long period of time. We would certainly be sympathetic and kind of contemplate and think about waiving late fees.
Thank you,
Mr. Mayor.
I honestly want to thank you. I know earlier you said it's your job, but there's a big difference. You haven't. It is your job, but you haven't been reactive. You've been proactive, and you've really taken the bull by the horn. So I admire that. I admire your leadership and your team.
Do you want to say that?
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Guanasso.
Thank you, Mr. President. On the same vein, Mr. Mayor, in terms of public safety, Revere Fire Department, Revere Police Department, God forbid something were to happen to the membership of, and I'm talking like wild spread, the good majority of the membership of the fire and police department are unable to perform their duties. Do we have a game plan in place to protect our community?
So we do, and I wouldn't go into the specifics of that, but that has been a point of conversation that I've had with both chiefs, especially after the the incident in, I think it was New York City, where an entire firehouse ended up testing positive, I think, or at some point, firefighters. So we want to be preparing for the worst, right? And the worst is pretty dire when you think about it, especially when there's an international pandemic that's involved. Yes, that is a topic of conversation, something that we're kind of thinking about and planning for. And there will be, at some point, which I've really appreciated from everybody, and I failed to mention my own office, because they've always been there 100%, and they've always been all hands on deck. But and they've done an incredible job during this trying time. But everyone's all hands on deck, and so whatever that looks like for our community, I'm confident that we have folks that are professional, resilient, and will get the job done. And unfortunately, we are thinking about those worst case scenarios.
Yeah, I'm not an alarmist, and I certainly want to downplay that just as much as possible to not frighten our senior citizens and namely our residents. And this is an important factor, and I think that we have to work as feverishly as we can. You even tried to send me home this morning.
I did.
We're still taking care of a senior citizen. You said, "What are you doing here?" I said, "I'm out here doing my job," and I don't look as myself as a senior citizen because I'm very active, but I do appreciate the fact that we are ready to go with our seniors, and I think that what you said to here tonight will inform our community. And I think it's day by day, as everyone has stated. I've watched this and saturated myself with as much information as I could, and we got some good, valid information here this evening.
Well, that makes sense why you had to get out of the house, I think, right? That's why you're in City Hall.
Oh, I'm glad you were trying to protect me. I like that.
I'm always looking out for my fellow residents.
Thank you.
That.
God bless. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Council Guanasso. And if I can just bring up a few points of information from the council. I know that there's been some communications on large gatherings, and it's gone down from 25, and just recently President Trump had suggested recommendations of no more than 10. As a city council, tonight we are actually participating live on GoToMeeting. So we are going to be able to do web meetings, and that may have to be something more of the future, especially as this continues. And we do have a participant online. Our Councilor Novoselsky is participating from home, so he is not absent. He's present at the meeting. He is voting through the support of Ruben, but Councilor Novoselsky took the precautions and stayed home. And next week, when we have our following meeting, we have plenty more meetings tonight. We're going to hope that more of us will participate from home. So that we don't have to have any issues with that assembly.
Mr. President, just really quickly on that,
okay, yes.
I am prepared and will be probably participating from future meetings from home or from virtually, because I do think that it's important, and it's important for us to set the standard right in the community to show that we are taking this seriously. I kind of reluctantly am here tonight, but I do think that it's important for us to set the tone as a community that we're taking this seriously, that we do need to be at home. We can leverage technology as much as possible. We are doing that in terms of the business of the city, and we should do that for the business of the council as well. So, and I will say that other boards and commissions and meetings, in fact, tomorrow night's school committee meeting will most likely be virtual, and so we are looking at boards and commissions being able to do the business that they need to do. The License Commission is a great example. They need to get licenses done, and business needs to continue. Whatever we can do to leverage technology and be able to do business virtually, we are doing. So
correct. And tonight will serve as a bit of a dry run, test run. And I know that you can go on the Revere City calendar and click on the link if you want to follow the meeting the rest of the way through the webinar. And I know that there's some, I think Dr. Kelly is going to be signing in. And the last point on this COVID-19, I really appreciate your response, but I did want to mention just giving kudos, and although it's way too early to give many kudos because I know this fight's going to be going on for some time, just talking to some colleagues in the city and at work, they've mentioned colleague specifically that deals with pandemic response, and she said that she's been called by so many communities for efforts and help. And she's glad to hear that she heard Revere had a pretty good plan in place and has the right, not just a plan, but has the right people in place. So thank you very much for being here, because some communities are really, they're not set up the way we have been. So we're lucky to have that, and I hope that we don't need to go too far, but we're in good shape. Councilor Rotundo.
Sorry. Through you to the mayor, through Kim, Dr. Kong, anybody who can answer the question. As we've seen on TV, the bold and new approach with a public-private partnership of providing test kits. I know Roche will be rolling them out pretty soon if they're not doing it now. CVS, Walgreens, and so forth. I understand Walmart as well. Where is our coordination with that? And
So
as the smile comes off.
I will say this, that there will most likely be conversations about mobile test sites, and I know that other mayors are fielding questions and interest in having mobile sites. I think the big question about that is around logistics, right? And making sure that if there are pop-up, drive-up test sites, that they be done in a really transparent and clear and in a way that the folks from public safety to public health and everyone can kind of be on board with. But I know that those conversations are happening. And so that will probably be something that happens relatively quickly. I think as soon as, what we've heard is maybe as soon as later this week, there'll be real, here's a plan for a test site in a parking lot, for example. And so what that looks like, I know that can be something that is going to raise a lot of concern and be something that we really have to think thoroughly through. But I am anticipating those kind of conversations.
So part of my questioning with that is that it should be coordinated with Cambridge Health Alliance as well as the Mass General, because
that's why we're so lucky to have Dr. Kong here.
Right.
but
as well as the other institutions that serve the city, because we're going to be able to help vitally offload those people that don't need to be tested right away versus those that do need to be tested because they are showing critical signs such as shortness of breath and a high fever. That being said, I mean, the model that they're using out in California is working very, very well. The model that they use in South Korea is what we're using here in the States. And that's something that we look to kind of roll out. But that said, that's probably the biggest piece of this puzzle, because that's the only way that you're going to blunt that spike. Right. Is you got to test them right away, and you got to figure out who's who and self-isolate. And if I'm wrong, doctor, please correct me. So the quicker that measure gets off the ground, the quicker we're going to be. And like I said to you before, I'm home, so I'm more than happy to help.
Thank you, Councilor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate it is too early to be patting each other on the back, but I want everyone to know that we are prepared and we have a great team in place to make sure that we get through this and we can then gather with more than 10 people in a room sometime in the future.
Great, thank you. And with that, we're going to go back to regular business. Madam Clerk? All in favor? Roll call vote on that communication, Madam Clerk?
Shall the City Council approve a transfer in the amount of $1 million from the General Fund Stabilization Fund to the Emergency Management Planning Account? Councilor Janino?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Guanasso?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor McKenna?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Morabito?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Novoselsky is voting yes remotely. Councilor Powers? Yes. Councilor Rotundo?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Sereno?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Visconti?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Zambudo?
Yes.
Yes. And Council President Keefe?
Yes.
Yes, the transfer has been approved.
Madam Clerk?
Calendar item number 5, unfinished business. Motion presented by Councilor McKenna that the mayor request the Water and Sewer Department to repair the sewage line at the Revere Public Library. The bathroom at the library is comprised is compromised due to the line being in disrepair. This motion was approved by the City Council back in 2017.
Madam Council McKenna?
Thank you, Mr. President. I think this speaks for itself. It was supposed to be fixed 2017. It's still in disarray, so I just think that the Water and Sewer Department should take a look at it, and we should, I mean, it's a public place, and we should have it fixed. Thank you.
I think we all agree. All in favor? Opposed? So moved.
Calendar item number 6 was the Public Works Subcommittee report, and that's going to be held over until a later date. Okay. Calendar item number 7 is the Zoning Subcommittee report.
Councilor Zambudo?
Thank you, Mr. President. The zoning subcommittee met earlier this evening with one item to take up, the special permit for 225 Broadway, new convenience store. This was, well, it's been discussed for quite a long time. It's a good project and a good business, and the committee voted favorably to vote this out to the full council with a favorable recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Zambudo. So we're going to have a roll call vote on this, Madam Clerk?
Shall the City Council grant the relief requested, subject to the findings and conditions of site plan review? Councilor Janino? Yes. Councilor Guanasso?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor McKenna?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Morabito?
Yes.
Yes. Is he? Councilor Novoselsky voting present. Councilor Powers? Yes. Councilor Rotundo? Yes. Councilor Sereno?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Visconti?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Zambudo?
Yes.
Yes. And Council President Keefe?
Yes.
Yes, the special permit has been granted. Calendar item number 8 is the Appointments Subcommittee report.
Councilor Guanasso?
Mr. President, earlier this evening, the appointment subcommittee met. We had a few items before us. Three very important items was 20-050 is the appointment of Richard Viscay to the Revere Housing Authority, and 20-051 was the appointment of Richard Viscay to the Director of Finance position. I asked that the subcommittee met and they came out with a favorable report. I asked the committee do the same on this vote. On the motion to approve.
No roll call, but we did have a communication on 051. There was a record sent by Eric Lampedecchio. Just he wanted to have some verbiage on the record in regards to Richard Viscay's appointment.
Can we waive the reading and just go on with the vote, please?
Yep, enter into record. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So ordered.
Next, Mr. President, is 20-076 is appointment of Michael Picardi as a purchasing agent. Again, that was voted out favorably by the appointment subcommittee. I ask that that be voted on this evening. On the motion.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? So ordered.
And finally, we have several members that are applying for the drain layer position. 20-069, Spencer Contracting. 20-071, D&M Civil Inc. 20-072, McGrath Enterprises. 20-074, Raphael Construction. 20-075, Procopio Enterprises. Again, they were voted out favorably, and I ask this committee of the whole do the same.
Thank you, Council. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? So ordered.
Thank you. End of report.
Calendar item number 11, communication from the city auditor relative to the free cash appropriation for accrued vacation liability.
Mr. Viscay?
Hello, everyone. Thank you for the appointment vote. Appreciate that. This motion is before you because, as you know, we had some department heads retire, two of which were here a very long time. We had some accrued liabilities with vacation, and sick leave and such that was paid out, which leaves us in a position where we could run short to pay the rest of the budget for the end of the fiscal year. So what I'm asking for here is just an appropriation so I can backfill those, the sick and vacation buyouts so that we can finish the year in a positive balance. So I'm here to answer any questions if you have any.
Thank you. I just have one comment, if I may, fellow councilors. Mr. Viskey, certainly I'm going to be in favor of this. A lot of these finances have been distributed from years of, there's a lot of things that have been grandfathered in. I just wanted to make sure that as the person in this department, if we can, this is a golden parachute, right? This is what they call them. And I'm not in favor of taking that away from anyone. But moving forward, as the city continues to evolve, I would hope that this isn't a precedent that continues to be set with, 6 months, 8 months, a year of leave time or vacation time that doesn't get used and gets carried over. There's no real check on it. And I would hope that we don't have these continuing down the road.
Hold on. I'll let the mayor speak to this.
So I'll just say this, it was a policy that we had inherited, much to my surprise. One thing that we did do in contract negotiations was make sure that it would not go forward. We had asked people to essentially use it or lose it by the end of this year. So the two folks that you're voting on tonight didn't, and so we still have to pay it out. But that is something that goes back to decades ago. So it goes back decades, and again, something that was inherited. And we're just cleaning it up, and we're going to make sure that that doesn't happen going forward.
Great, thank you. Roll call.
Shall the City Council approve an appropriation from free cash to Treasurer Collector Permanent Salaries Account in the amount of $94,365? Councilor Janino?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Guanasso?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor McKenna?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Morabito?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Novoselsky? Voting yes. Remotely, Councilor Powers?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Rotundo? Yes. Yes. Councilor Sereno?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Visconti?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Zambudo?
Reluctantly, yes.
Yes. And Council President Keefe?
Yes.
Yes, the transfer has been approved. Calendar item number 12, communication from the mayor relative to a mechanical parking system zoning amendment.
This is going to be ordered to a public hearing on April 27th. All in favor? So moved.
Calendar item number 13, communication from the mayor relative to a loan order for the FOG-CMOM project.
This is going to also be ordered to a public hearing on April 27th. All in favor? So moved.
Calendar item number 14, communication from the mayor relative to a brew pub zoning amendment.
This is going to be placed on, this is going to be ordered to a public hearing on April 27th. All in favor? Opposed? So moved.
Calendar item number 15, communication from the retirement board notifying the city council that it will consider and vote on whether to grant a COLA for eligible retirees.
Placed on file.
Calendar item number 17, communication from the mayor relative to the new appointment of Earthworks Industries as a licensed drain layer.
We're going to refer this to Council Guanasso's subcommittee, which will be held when, Council Guanasso? We are meeting next week. So we're going to do this before the general meeting at 5:45 on 3/23, March 23rd.
Calendar item number 20, communication from the mayor relative to a new appointment of Super Service Today as a licensed drain layer.
This will also be sent to Council Guanasso's subcommittee. 5:45. All in favor?
On to motions. Calendar item number 24, motion presented by Councilor Morabito, that the City Council accept the provisions of Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 60, Section 3D, relative to the establishment of an aid to elderly and disabled taxation fund.
Council Morabito.
Mr. President, the acceptance of Section 3D of Chapter 60 of Massachusetts General Law will allow the treasurer to create an elderly and disabled taxation fund. This is needed in order to allow a voluntary checkoff, which I'll go into on my next motion.
Any other councils? All in favor? Opposed? So moved.
Calendar item number 25, motion presented by Councilor Morabito, that the mayor request the city treasurer to designate a place on the city's municipal or excise tax bills whereby taxpayers may voluntarily check off to donate a designated amount not less than $1 to the Elderly and Disabled Taxation Fund. Further, that the mayor proceed with the creation of a taxation aid committee in accordance with the provisions of MGL Chapter 60, Section 3D, for the purpose of carrying out the provisions of said section.
Councilor Rotundo. Sorry, Councilor Morabito.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yeah, we look alike. Passing this ordinance will, we do, you don't see the similarities? Passing this ordinance will designate a place on the municipal tax bill for voluntary checkoff, where citizens can donate no less than $1 for the purpose of defraying real estate taxes of elderly and disabled people of low income. This will also allow the city to create, the mayor to appoint a tax aid committee that will disperse the funds. Thank you.
Any other councils? All in favor? Opposed? So moved.
Calendar item number 26, motion presented by Councilor Rotundo that the mayor, Superintendent Dr. Kelly, Fire Chief Bright, and Police Chief Guido, the Director of Public Health, and the Revere City Council hold a town hall meeting regarding coronavirus at one of the local schools between the hours of 7 p.m. and 9 p.m. Additionally, that this event be televised and recorded.
Councilor Rotundo.
I think after what's transpired, that can be waived.
Thank you, Council.
Place on file.
Place on file, please.
Placed on file.
Calendar item number 27, motion presented by Councilor Rotundo that the mayor request Superintendent Dr. Kelly or her representative to appear before the City Council to discuss creating a class called First Aid and Life Skills. Likewise, that the class be 30 to 60 minutes under the auspices of a doctor willing to teach. This class shall commence from the first day of middle school until high school graduation.
Councilor Rotundo.
Thank you, and I hope we can put this in committee. The very basic concept of this is to have a format put in place where children learn first aid from a very early age until they leave school, and I think that would be a great thing for our community. Thank you.
So we have Dr. Kelly. She is on the webinar. She'd like to comment. Dr. Kelly, if you can hear us.
I can. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. And
Okay.
this is like earth-shattering right now.
I do appreciate the motion. We've been working with students, particularly in light of the Student Opportunity Act, to identify new electives and outside of school experience they would like to have, which we now finally, after so many years, have an opportunity to fund. And I actually was able to meet with Mr. Kingston's advanced placement U.S. government classes the week before we, found ourselves in this unfortunate situation, and had a long conversation with those kids, particularly around a course on life skills and home economics and that stuff. We talked about how that intersects with the purpose of public education today, which might be a little bit different than it was when all of us on this webinar or in that room were in school.
A little bit.
But we did agree that we were going to work with students to put together a survey for all middle schoolers and high schoolers to take so that they could identify what they feel appropriate new courses and elective courses would be that they would have the most interest in. And we were going to take guidance from there in defining our next steps.
Council President.
Thank you, Dr. Kelly. Councilor Rotundo.
Through you, Mr. President, to Dr. Kelly, Superintendent of Schools, I'd like to thank you personally for your hard work regarding this pandemic and your continued work during these very troubling times. With that said, my hope would be that at the very least, and I understand having a child that goes to Revere High School, that the children, from what you were saying, maybe picking up some of their ideas. My suggestion and my hope would be, at the very least, that there'd be a class on CPR and hopefully on choking, which I think are probably the two most biggest thing, and then thereafter that, how to control bleeding. So hopefully we can get that accomplished accordingly. And if you can't hear me right now, I'm sure you'll see this video, and we'll move forward from there. Thank you. Thank you, Councilor Rotundo. Any other councilors wish to speak? So
She couldn't hear us now, but I'm able to type to her. And again, and I just if I can clarify, this is a bit of a dry run, and we're going to work through some kinks. The governor has released a notice that some of the open meeting law is being relaxed because of the inability to have large venue meetings. So we're trying to do our best to get up to date. And again, you've all been in the city many years, and this is the first time that we've hosted a webinar at a city council meeting. I would only imagine that we're going to get better. Hopefully we don't have to do it all the time, but if we do in these cases, we're going to get better and better. So if everyone could just bear with us, we're doing the best thing we can. All right? All in favor and placed on file? All in favor. So moved.
Calendar item number 28, motion presented by Councilor Rotundo that the City Council request the President of the Chamber of Commerce to appear before the City Council to discuss including Narcan and CPR face shields in the first aid kits of businesses throughout our community.
Placed in committee. 28. Oh, placed in the Public Safety Subcommittee, please. All in favor? So moved.
Calendar item number 29, motion presented by Councilor Keefe that the City Council request the McMacken League Board of Directors to appear before the City Council to explain the intentions of their organization to restore the use of the property as a baseball field.
Thank you, councilors. Councilor Janino?
Thank you, Mr. President. This is a great motion, and I support you wholeheartedly. Out of all the questions I get in the city, I can't tell you how many parents say, what's going on with that field, and what's the city doing? And it makes us look really bad. So I want to get some answers, and I know it's been an issue for many years. So great motion.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor McKenna, I'm going to go right down.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to know, and I know there's been a couple of councilors and the mayor. We've met with the Board of Directors of the McMacken field. We've sat and tried to work some issues out, and we couldn't. We tried to go forward with them, and we couldn't. We were just stuck. But I want the public to know that we have been working on this. I think we met about maybe 6 months ago, and that was the end of it, but we have been sitting down with them and talking to them and trying to find a solution. So this is not a dead subject. This has been happening, and we need to, go forward a lot more with this, but this has been happening. It's been an ongoing conversation, so thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Morbido.
Thank you. I know this has been an ongoing situation. I don't think we've ever had them before the council before, or requested them to be before the council. I know even Speaker DeLeo is involved in this as well. So, this would be interesting to have them before us to ask some questions.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Zambudo?
Thank you, Mr. President. Really briefly, this is a great motion, if for no other reason that the citizens know that we do not own this property. I've been hearing this for years. I tried to tell them that we tried to acquire this property because that's the only way we could correct the problem for them, and they didn't want to do it. So this is simply a board that doesn't want to fix this for whatever reason. They don't want to use their resources to do it, but it's a bad reflection on the city because it's a blight. And it really, I think there should be some action taken through the Board of Health to get this moving. And if that's what it takes, that's what should happen. But this is a health and safety hazard. It's also a disgrace because people think that we're neglecting this property. And, if this was city property, this would have been fixed 10 years ago. So it's a sad situation because that was a beautiful ballpark for so many years. It was like a little Fenway Park, and it's really sad, really sad. But it is not city property. To all my constituents out there, we would never neglect a piece of property like that for this period of time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Visconti.
The property's become an eyesore for the area, and it's a great motion. What I'd like to do is, if you don't mind, Mr. President, is add a subsequent motion to that. There's a pole in that property that's falling down, that's going to fall. I'd like to have, see what we need to do, or have the owners of that property fix that pole, just in case kids jump that fence and hang out there. If that pole falls on, and I believe it has some electricity to that pole, if that pole falls, God knows what it could do. So I'd like to get that resolved as well.
Mr. President?
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Morbido.
Can I have some leeway? Can I suggest that this go to public safety subcommittee? This way, especially, and make sure it's not a bashing fest, if they do come up.
Good suggestion. Any other councilors wishing to speak? And I just wanted to say a few comments on it. So I agree. I don't want this. First of all, I'm on many youth boards in the city, and I understand what it's like. No, I don't think anyone wants to make this a bashing session, but I would say there needs to be a truth session. There's so much hearsay on this property. There's hearsay with what the board has in their savings. There's hearsay in what people think that we're going to do with the property. We don't own the property. If there was some willingness to work with the city, I'm sure the city would be willing to work with them. And there's all these rumors of what people want to do and what they don't want to do. But I can tell you, as from my purview, and I can tell you that I would imagine the entire city council would be in favor of, is to have this property be used for physical activity, for the youth, for an open space to be used for the city. If it's a baseball league, fantastic. If it can't be and it needs to be changed into something else, but put it towards good recreational use in the city. Simple as that. And if anyone doesn't agree with that, and they're just going to be okay with looking at it, and no one even knows who the board of directors are, I think it just needs to be a truth session, and there needs to be some transparency in front of the city council. So if it goes in front of a subcommittee, that's fine, but I could tell you that you could throw it into 3 different subcommittees. It could be in the recreation department, it could be public safety, so it might as well be just in front of the committee, Parks and Rec. So we'll put that in Parks and Rec. Thank you. All in favor?
And it should be noted, there was some commentary from a resident that will be added to the meeting minutes.
Eric Lampedecchio, if you could read he had a short note, if you could read Eric Lampedecchio's note on this.
Sure, so resident Eric Lampendecchio has submitted some commentary on Council Order 20-082. Thank you, Councilor Key, for bringing this long-standing issue before the council. I played ball at McMacken Field as a child, and it's a disgrace to see the field in its current condition. Residents in the area have expressed concerns about the field being rezoned for an apartment building, and I surely hope that is not the case. I, like many residents, hope that the field can and will be restored to a playable condition in the near future. There are also additional concerns surrounding mosquitoes as we are approaching the summer months. What are the owner's plans to handle that issue?
Thank you. And we'll just put that into the record, and we're going to put this into Parks and Recreation Subcommittee. All in favor? Aye. So ordered.
Calendar item number 30, motion presented by Councilor Novoselsky that the mayor request the city solicitor to develop an ordinance controlling the use of television satellite dishes on buildings, including but not limited to the number of dishes on a building per apartment.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Councilor Novoselsky is not present. Is he able to talk via the webinar? Ruben? Is Councilor Novoselsky able to speak on this motion? So Councilor Novoselsky is on the webinar, but we're trying to get him to figure out how to unmute. Is that little speaker volume button there, Councilor? Okay. So we can place this into, we can approve this. All in favor? Opposed? So moved.
Calendar item number 31, motion presented by Councilor Keefe that the mayor request the Department of Public Works to review the feasibility of installing dog bag stations and receptacles along Mountain and Park Avenues.
Any councilors? I know that we have much bigger fish to fry right now, and especially in light of what's going on in the world, but If you could just pick up your dog poop, that'd be great. And if we can get some support from the city with some signage and some dog bag stations along those major stretches, that would be fantastic as well. All in favor? Opposed? So ordered.
Calendar item number 32, motion presented by Councilor Rotundo, that the City of Revere look into the feasibility into creating a stabilization account for an affordable housing trust fund as introduced by Councilor at Large Leo Robinson in Chelsea. This is a great idea, and if possible, with the council and mayor's help, who have a dream of buying a home in Revere, make buying it a reality in Revere.
Madam Clerk, Councilor Rotundo had to leave, and he had to leave on an emergency, but any councilors wishing to speak on this? I think it's a great motion. All in favor? Opposed? So ordered.
Calendar item number 33, motion presented by Councilor Sereno, that the mayor requests Revere's representative on the Logan Airport Community Advisory Committee to inquire with Massport and the FAA about flight patterns over West Revere. Recently, residents in the Malden Street, Washington Avenue neighborhood have noticed a spike in noise from overflights, especially during bad weather.
Councilor Sereno.
So a few weeks ago, we had some bad weather. It was foggy and rainy. And this one particular night, residents, I heard it as well. I got a few calls the day after. We had airplanes flying almost, I know Beachmont and Point of Pines gets it all the time. But in this particular instance, we had them one after another, from like 7 o'clock at night until we went to bed. So a few people had called on that, and I don't know if it's because of the bad weather that they are now coming over West Revere, but I was just hoping to get some clarification from the CAC about this, so thank you.
Sereno, Council McKenna.
Thank you. Rick, I just want you to know that I redirected them to your West Revere, so no, I just want to include Beachmont in this, if we can put this in the motion, Beachmont in this motion, because we have planes flying 7 days a week, 3 minutes apart, 24 hours a day, and and I'm very passionate about this. So if we can add to Beachmont to this motion, I would be really happy. Thank you.
Yeah, if we could
Councilor
add,
Sereno.
and Councilor Powers as well had asked, we can add Beachmont and the Point of Pines as well.
Thank you, Councilor. Yeah, we should maybe amend it to Revere.
It's for the whole city.
Wonderful. Do you want to include Saugus or Chelsea?
I'm good.
Okay, and I know that there was a constituent that had wanted to read something into the record. Madam Clerk?
Resident Eric Lampadecchio also submitted some commentary via email. Thank you, Councilor Sereno, for raising this issue. It's obvious that flight patterns from Logan have changed and the amount of flights increased, as I too now have low-flying aircraft over my home at all hours of the night. Upon complaining to Massport, they did cite weather and wind in their explanation to me, but offered no resolution. Perhaps Massport can revisit their program that was used in the late 90s to provide soundproof windows for residents affected by these new flight paths. I know that this was helpful in Beachmont back then, and maybe it will be helpful for residents in Ward 5 and 6.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Motion, all in favor? Opposed, so ordered. And that is going to be the last of tonight. What I'd like to do is, we have a point of personal privilege, Councilor Sereno.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to take a quick point of personal privilege that I know for the next few weeks we're probably all going to be practicing social distancing and hunkering down at home, but I just want to keep our local businesses, especially our local restaurants, in mind. If you've been following social media today, a lot of restaurants in the city have been posting that they're going to be doing contactless delivery, so you can order from them and somebody will come to your door, leave the food. You won't have to, deal with anybody. But we want to keep our small restaurants in mind and continue to patronize them where we can. And when you do so, when you leave a tip, if you could leave a tip for the amount that you would leave at a table for waitress service. So just so we can, do our part and try to support our local restaurants during this time. Thank you.
Councilor Sereno, Councilor Zambuto, would you like to speak?
I want to thank Councilor Sereno for that, but I also want to say, some of us have favorite restaurants, and if you have a favorite restaurant, go in and buy some gift certificates. You're going to use them later, or you're going to give them away to people that you care about. But that's one way of supporting our local businesses. Buy some gift certificates. My favorite place is the Manos. I'm going to be buying a ton of gift certificates there to keep them in business, because this is a tough situation for all our small businesses. We got to do everything we can. So if you can, buy some gift certificates. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. And Councilor Morabito also has a point of personal privilege.
Thank you. Earlier, someone mentioned supermarkets changing their hours to accommodate the elderly or 60. Actually, Stop and Shop is going to start on March 19th. They're going to offer specific shopping hours for customers 60 years of age and older, from 6 a.m. to 7:30 a.m., and that's beginning March 19th.
Thank you, Councilor. And if I can just state, the next council meeting and Ms. Ferranti, thanks for pointing that out. The next council meeting will be Monday, March 23rd. Everyone have a great night. Be safe. Motion to adjourn.